Good morning, everyone. Sorry for all the delays. Let's see, can everyone see and hear me this morning? I had to make a lot of changes yesterday, so once again, everything is reconfigured, and change is dukkha. So I got a new piece of equipment to help out with the morning podcast and our morning stream, and it required that I kind of change everything. And despite all my testing last night, still didn't work the way I thought it would. So yeah, no change is delight. I don't think we get that option in life. Change is the nature. So I'm way behind on the chat. Maybe I'll work backwards here. Good morning, Stan. Could you talk about how change is bliss? Aniccā, vata, saṅkhārā. Yeah, I talked a little bit about that a few days back. Aniccā, vata, saṅkhārā. Actually, no, I was talking about sabbe saṅkhārā anicca, sabbe dhamma anattati. There is no self in the conditioned or the unconditioned. There's another little short Dhamma saying, though, and it's used in the funeral chanting in Thailand. I'm not sure about other countries, but it's used in the funeral chanting in Thailand. And trying to remember the Pali right now. Anicca vata saṅkhārā upadavaya dhammino upajitava nirujanti tesang upasamo sukho. And it talks about this fleeting nature of saṅkhāras and how the cessation is bliss. Like the ending of things is bliss. So and it's a very potent kind of line for reflection, similar to that other sort of reflection on saṅkhārā. So if people want to look it up, the easiest way, I suppose, is the internet and Google. But if you want to look it up in a book, it is in our funeral chanting. And I don't have that right here in front of me. But one of the very last chants that we do in the funeral chanting is talking about how the body, with the cessation of life, with death, how the body lies on the ground as valueless, as useless as a log. And that image, coupled with this kind of reflection on how the cessation of conditions is bliss, is a really potent kind of reflection. It's kind of like two sides of becoming and cessation. And Ajahn Sudanto has many talks where he reflects on this. And we're very focused on what's next, what's new, being and becoming. And in some sense, we're kind of loath to notice how peaceful and blissful cessation is. In becoming is dukkha. In becoming is a certain amount of dissonance and stress, even good things. So, in like a good party, it's a lot of work to get going. It's a lot of work having that much fun. And I'm sure everyone's had an experience of the bliss of it being over, the bliss of cessation. So, and that's the good stuff. When we reflect on the less than good, painful experiences of life, of course, the cessation is bliss. But that teaching in particular is just, like, if we understand this on some level, that saṅkhāras can't take us to completion, saṅkhāras are not true happiness, and our relationship to the conditioned changes. It's like when we have the presence of mind to live that insight, and for that to be informing our direct awareness, it's blissful. And if we've been caught up in being and becoming, and we catch ourselves and we're able to return and remember this insight, then we return to something that is peaceful, blissful, serene. A very direct way you can practice this in your meditation is to couple that with the event of the breath. Like the in-breath is like becoming. It's fresh energy. It's arising. It's being. But it only lasts as a condition for so long. And then the exhalation begins. And the cessation of that, if you kind of liken that to birth and death, or if you liken that to how we are born into things, we get excited about something, we're looking forward to something, or we're dreading something, and there's this whole sort of cycle of being, becoming, birth, death, and noticing cessation and noticing how things cease. If one has the proper understanding, it's very peaceful, and you can build a whole nice meditation around just noticing cessation. And I have to credit Lumpur Sumedho here. This was a very favorite theme of his, noticing cessation. You just set up the mind, and you can work with breath, but also you can do this with thought, which is very fleeting. But you can also do it with emotional states. Tune into and become mindful of their presence, their arising, their maintenance, their cessation. And it's good to get a first-hand, upfront, direct experience of how cessation is peaceful, because without clarity around that, a human life is a frightful thing. We're not in control, and there's all kinds of sensitivities and fearful things. But when we mature spiritually and emotionally through the cultivation of the Dhamma, then we arrive at a place where there's a great understanding, clarity, acceptance of the nature of things, and most importantly, the nature of them to arise and cease, and the strength of heart to be at peace with that. And knowing that in oneself and experiencing that again and again, it's not just freeing, it develops a kind of fearlessness. So thanks for the question, Stan. I like that one. That's nice. And yeah, direct people to look that up in the chanting book. I don't want to, I've been messing around enough this morning trying to get the stream going. So good morning, Dinka's Bits and Pieces. Ajahn, isn't permanence equally unsatisfactory as change? Isn't permanence equally unsatisfactory as change? We can't stand anything for too long, can we? Too much of even the best thing is too much. It's all in the attitude I'm thinking. What is permanence? Isn't permanence equally unsatisfactory? There is no permanence. Part of the whole contemplation of unconditionality is kind of pointing that to the fact that there is no permanence. So nothing can be found that's permanent. So and your question of we can't stand it, we can't stand anything for too long, can we? Well, stand it, like it's dukkha, like in one of the most fundamental senses of that word. It's unsatisfactory. So yes, we say things are unsatisfactory because they're not permanent. But we're not just talking about physics here. I mean, we're talking about the human heart. So, that they're unsatisfactory because they're ephemeral and in flux. They're processes. They're not things that we possess or own. They're not me. They're not mine. Not worthy of building a self upon. So, because of that, they're unsatisfactory. In a very fertile ground for cultivation is to explore the relationship between control, or the lack of control that we have in this experience, and the relationship that has to the Buddhist concept of dukkha. So, and in some sense, in a very profound sense, as defined in the Anaṭtalakkhana Sutta, one of the most important facets of this selfing complex really is an attempt to find a home, a refuge, to find control in an uncontrollable world, to find stasis, to find completion in something that's never at rest and that cannot be under our control. So, and when we make peace with that, then, or when we understand that, and our relationship to saṅkhāras and our relationship to this ephemeral nature that's out of control forever and always, then we find a kind of freedom, a fearlessness, and a peace at being with things as they are. So, so there's one model for contemplation in the suttas. Consider what is saṅkhāra, this word's related to saṅkhāra, what is concocted, what is conditioned, put together, and asaṅkhāra, that which is not conditioned, and the experience of nibbana, or you could say the mind of the Buddha. It's not really a very accurate way to think of it, but that is the only thing that is asaṅkhāra. It is without condition. And that's a very interesting contemplation. People get themselves tied in knots thinking, well, isn't it conditioned if it's like something, there's a path and you're developing conditions, like we talk about developing the conditions all the time, cultivating the path. Okay, let me see. I want to go back here and see if I can catch up with some of the at mentions that people put in. Okay, so let's see. I like this question, Sumana. Why is it that meditation is instantly more settled when one is not planning to meditate? Well, it's good. It's a good question. There can be probably many reasons. One worth investigating is just the nature of the self. And what our expectations are. I remember one time running an experiment like where I struggled in my personal time with sometimes trying to figure out how long I should sit, and especially early on I was pursuing all kinds of notions of, you need to sit an hour, or you needed to train yourself to sit an hour and a half or 2 hours or something like this. And I remember at some point when I was doing that, how it was robbing me of some of the joy of meditation, because the ideals became just kind of heavy. Like there's this sort of, they're fraught with me and mind and being and becoming in some way. Implicit in that is some sort of measurement of yourself and your capabilities, and there was some sort of juvenile notion of, if I can sit for X amount of time and be somebody who's capable of that or mastered that or something, then I can be confident in myself as a practitioner and as a monk and as a meditator. And then I remember, outside of like determinations to sit, like just having, there's all these little in between and free moments sometimes in the monastery, in a trained monastery, where you have a lot of group activities and group schedules, and the encouragement is to use that time just to return to your meditation. So, and I remember during that time period just thinking, why is that so much more enjoyable? And it's because I let myself off the hook. There's some element of being and becoming and self-judgment that I could relax in just free meditation time. Nobody's expecting me to meditate, not even myself. It's just there's a pause in the schedule, or we're kind of waiting for a meeting to begin. And you're just freely kind of meditating. And it's really wonderful. And you have to think, well, why? It's like, well, because I'm not bound by various habits of selfing and striving. And there's a place for striving and setting goals, but they have to be held appropriately. Good morning, June. Could you please speak to offering dana and dedicating merit only for those who have passed? Yeah. They are, there's very little in the suttas that goes into the details of this, what I would call cultural practice of dedicating merit. There are suttas where it's talked about, not a sutta that I know in particular, but I think there's a couple. And people are wondering, is it really efficacious to dedicate merit? And in the particular sutta I'm thinking of, the Buddha describes beings, your relatives, reborn in a ghost realm, experiencing the privations of a ghost realm, and how it is that they could benefit. And I remember reading the sutta, and it's like it's fairly narrowly prescribed, and that's only kind of buffered at the end with the Buddhist expansion of the notion of the large swath of samsara, or of time, and how it is that the interrelatedness of all beings is greater than one would imagine or can imagine. So And based on that, and also the insurance policy of covering your bases, there's very strong cultural traditions in Asia, and I don't think they're exclusively Buddhist at all, of dedicating merit and doing good deeds and practicing other rituals for deceased relatives and family members in particular. So if one, engages in that sort of practice, though, one can notice what a beautiful and beneficial thing it is to do good with the thoughts of others and the thought of sharing it with other beings, in particular beings that one has some sort of connection to. And it almost seems somewhat related to the kind of notion of well-wishing or praying for someone. And it's kind of a beautiful emotional experience or practice to do good things, to arouse loving kindness, to wish one well, and to dedicate the power of goodness to other beings. So, and I tend to be a little more focused on that rather than trying to figure out how it is that this might sort of work in Buddhist cosmology. So, and I think in practice, people dedicate merit not just for people that have deceased. So, okay, maybe one more here. Going backwards again. Good morning, Ajahn. Can you help me with the difference between perceptions and mental formations? Saññā, Saṅkhāra. Yeah, that's a. They are quite closely related. And it's, if you want to get really refined about it, there's various suttas that kind of go into it, but it's more, you'll find more definition in the commentaries. Perceptions are, sometimes even you'll see translators talk about perception as memory, and it's based on our conditioning. It's empty of volition. So like the big difference here is they're both aspects of mind, and Saññā is absent volition in some sense. I mean, although all these things are working together, whereas Saṅkhāra, there is an element of volition that's kind of gluing together the thought formations, whether it's an emotion or a thought of one type or another. So because of our volitions, our intentions, we notice something and not other things, and there's contact, sense contact. With perception, with saññā, there need not be volition. It's more like an automatic process based on past karma, based on conditioning. and in some sense, just based on the nature of the mind to perceive things, like to perceive green and blue and yellow and red. That doesn't take volition to recognize colors and that they're distinct. To remember that it's called blue or green or red or yellow, like then there's kind of volition there. There's some intentionality. There's something else kind of working that's more concocted, more put together, I would say, than the experience of just raw saññā. Good morning, Charles. I'm finding well-wishing for my late ex-wife, with whom there were many difficulties, to be bringing peace, lightness, and a sense of ease. Oh, that's good. Knowing that she's recently passed, it comes to mind based on our conversation of dedicating merit and doing good deeds. And one of the things I find very beautiful about that tradition is how it gives you something very positive and concrete to come together with relatives and friends to transform the experience of separation from the loved, parting, grief, and dealing with the challenge of adjusting to our friends and loved ones and our family having departed, rather than just randomly be sabotaged with memories of loss, separation, or even just random positive memories. The kind of cultural habit of doing good deeds and dedicating the merit and consciously bringing up people to mind that we were close to in our life that have passed. I think it's a very powerful way to kind of move through mourning and separation, and say recondition one's relationship to our loved ones as they've passed. And to infuse those relationships going forward, because even though they're not here sharing this terrestrial experience with us, they're a feature of our consciousness. So to care for and transform that relationship going forward after death, I think is a very positive and beautiful thing. And I have a lot of appreciation for how that is practiced in Buddhist countries. Okay, well, I'm going to leave it at that for today. We got a little bit of a late start. So, and let's see, Sumana, I see your little note on the camera focus floating in and out. That's good to know. I need to do some more testing. So, and I try to test and get everything sort of set up, and then I'm pretty much flying a little bit blind as this kind of happens in the morning. So I always appreciate feedback, even about the focus and the color and the light and the sound. So it's good to know what other people are seeing and experiencing, and I'll endeavor to get it sharp. So, all right, I'm going to leave it at that for today, friends. Be well and have a good day, and I'll see you tomorrow morning on our morning coffee time. Bye for now.